This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
Sink or soar? Cisco's strong results show that old tech companies still have what it takes, while new tech firm Twitter struggles to retain users.
Growing risks. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen says the economy faces new challenges, but she's not ready to change course just yet.
And hack attack at the IRS, the two words taxpayers don't want to hear as they prepare to file. All that and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Wednesday, February 10th.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Slowdown? What slowdown? After issuing a downbeat prediction for the most recent quarter, Cisco reported profits well above what Wall Street was expecting. And it didn't stop there. Cisco's outlook for the current quarter was upbeat as well. The Dow component also increased its dividend and added $15 billion to its buyback. The company earned 57 cents a share. That's 3 cents better than estimates. Revenue for the quarter came in around $12 billion, a slight decline from a year ago. As for the stock, shares took off initially after that report was released. And the results come at a tough time for the tech sector. And as Josh Lipton explained, Cisco's report was being closely watched as a proxy for business spending.
Tech has tanked, with the NASDAQ now down more than 10% so far this year. A big part of the concern, the global economic slowdown means companies are spending less on technology. And that's why tech investors were so interested to hear from Cisco, which is seen as a barometer of corporate IT spending.
It generated $49 billion in revenue in its last fiscal year. So the bottom line is it was very big, it remains big, and its earnings report is important for folks that want an updated view as to how the global economy and technology spending are playing out for this kind of company.
We've already heard from two big tech names that said a challenging global economy and soft IT spending was impacting their business. IBM's CFO, Martin Schroeter, called the macro environment mixed. And Intel's CEO, Brian Krzanich, said macro weakness weighed on the chipmakers' results. The problem for many tech companies, though, is that global tech spending is expected to grow at only a moderate pace. Business and government purchases of tech goods and services will only grow about 2% this year, according to Forrester. Now, that's better than the 3% drop suffered last year, but still represents a modest pace of expansion. Analysts say a rising U.S. dollar and weaker economic growth in China and Europe will pressure spending in 2016. So where does that leave tech investors? There's a good chance that the bad news is already priced in. As S&P's Kessler notes, many of these stocks have already sold off. And as a result, S&P recommends investors buy Cisco, IBM, and Intel. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Josh Lipton in San Francisco.
From old tech to new, Twitter, which wants to attract more users, didn't. The social media company's average monthly active users stalled in the fourth quarter, disappointing those who were looking for fresh signs of growth. Twitter earned 16 cents a share, and that was better than expected. Revenue just about in line, $710 million, but it was up strongly from a year ago. Now, the stock was volatile after hours, initially falling sharply only to rebound soon after. Julia Borston has more now on Twitter's results.
Twitter's quarterly report disappointing investors and sending the stock plummeting because of one key fact. Its user numbers actually declined from the third to the fourth quarter, which had ended with 305 million monthly active users. That number excludes its SMS fast followers, which use the service on more old-fashioned feature phones. Though the company met revenue expectations and beat earnings projections, it was the fact that it has been unable to grow that Twitter user base that weighed on the stock. And the fact that its Q1 revenue guidance disappointed expectations didn't help any. Twitter saying in its letter to shareholders that user trends are improving so far this year and that marketing efforts are paying off, but that failed to reassure investors. Back over to you.
Thank you very much, Julia. Rather confusing day on Wall Street as investors tried to make sense of testimony from Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen, and we'll have more on what she said a bit later in our program. The Dow Index gained as much as 187 points mid-morning, but then those gains faded. By the close, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell nearly 100 points to 15,914. The Nasdaq gained 14. The S&P 500 finished basically flat.
Well, the worst performing stock on the blue chip Dow Index today was Walt Disney Company. It reported record earnings, as we told you last night, but falling profit at its media unit dragged down shares. Separately, Time Warner shares were also lower, much lower, after reporting a bigger than expected drop in quarterly revenue and disappointing results at some of its cable networks. Shares of both closed at multi-year lows.
Tim Nolan joins us now to talk more about the ailing media sector. He is senior media analyst at Macquarie Securities. Tim, welcome. Nice to have you with us this evening.
Welcome. Thank you.
What about the market's response? Disney's report was pretty good. Is the market overreacting to some of the concerns out there about the media stocks?
I think it's something of an overreaction for some of these names. I think the justification is that the cord-cutting fears are really weighing now. You know, Disney and Time Warner both talked about subscriber declines for the basic TV bundle in the quarter just reported. Really, everything else in both of their reports was fine. Time Warner actually exceeded guidance, and they raised guidance for next year. But it was that one single point, I think, for both of these companies that was the concern. And it's a legitimate concern because this has been the primary profit driver of these companies for a long, long time.
And it's not just, obviously, Tim, Time Warner or Disney that was taken out to the woodshed. It was Discovery. It was Viacom, most especially. Talk to me about those two.
Well, interestingly, on Viacom, yesterday when they reported, they actually reduced their guidance for affiliate fee growth for the remainder of 2016. That was a high single-digit growth figure. It is now a low to mid-single-digit growth figure. And there are actually some reasons behind that which may make sense. Foreign exchange, and they include OTT SVOD sales to Netflix and the like in that figure. So that may rebound actually next year. Time Warner, though, talked about a 5% growth figure at Turner in the quarter, which is maybe just a little bit light, but they've got double-digit, they've got low teens growth in affiliate fees into 2016 and 2017. So I think, there is some legitimate anxiety, but so there is still growth. There's certainly maybe not as high as it was, but Time Warner has some nice built-in growth. And don't forget, we're talking about the traditional bundle that has been under pressure, but there are some alternative options. Disney talked about skinny bundles like Sling TV. Time Warner has talked about HBO Now, the OTT service, which has 800,000 subscribers. So there are some nice offsets there. It's companies like Viacom that don't have those options available to them that are really suffering more.
Tim, thank you very much for your insights. Tim Nolan with Macquarie Securities.
And to politics now, Carly Fiorina suspending her presidential campaign after a 7th place finish in last night's New Hampshire primary. Chris Christie will also drop out as well after he finished 6th. The big winners, of course, were Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders as voters showed their support for anti-establishment candidates.
Tonight, we serve notice to the political and economic establishment of this country that the American people will not continue to accept a corrupt campaign finance system that is undermining American democracy, and we will not accept a rigged economy.
We are going to make America great again, but we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. We're going to beat China, Japan. We're going to beat Mexico at trade. We're going to beat all of these countries that are taking so much of our money away from us on a daily basis. It's not going to happen anymore.
John Harwood covering the story for us. John, welcome. The other day I asked you when we get down to the final 4. I guess we're down to the final 6 right now. Trump seemingly the front runner for the nomination. Does he have the organization in some of these next states to pull it off?
No, but I don't think he's going to need the organization, Tyler. We've seen the power of his message is significant. The attraction he has, especially to working class voters in the Republican Party, is pretty powerful. Now, we go to South Carolina, where we'll test whether the ideological conservatism of Ted Cruz and the establishment credibility of Jeb Bush, brother of former president, who's still got pretty good numbers down there, and Marco Rubio is going to try to rebound. John Kasich got a lift out of New Hampshire. Whether they can compete and slow him down, but he's got a big lead, and his prospects are pretty good at this point, Tyler.
Let's switch to Bernie Sanders, John. Given the win that he just had, is Hillary Clinton in trouble?
She's in trouble, but not nearly as serious trouble as the rest of the Republican field opposing Trump is. Hillary Clinton remains a solid favorite for the Democratic nomination. The path for Bernie Sanders gets a lot steeper as he gets to states where there are more African American and Latino voters who are favorable to Hillary Clinton. But he's definitely lit a fire of enthusiasm. He will have a chance, and he'll have some money to test whether he can expand that base of support. You have to say, by history, the odds are not good, but can't count him out.
He's attracting some money. He's got a lot of the youth vote. Let's talk about money in this campaign. It has not translated into advantage. The two best financed candidates, Bush and Clinton, are not doing great.
Exactly right. And Donald Trump hasn't spent very much money. It shows that his ability to get press coverage and favorable press coverage, his celebrity, as well as his message, have overpowered the influence of money in the race. And the enthusiasm behind Bernie Sanders has overpowered Hillary Clinton's money, although Sanders has had enough to get his own message out. You know, we've seen for some time, Tyler, that the importance of television advertising has been diminishing in the race as social media and other avenues of information have proliferated and made it easier for campaigns to reach voters in other ways. This may be the campaign that kind of breaks the idea that a big bank account is what gets you elected.
All right, John, thank you very much. John Harwood reporting tonight from Washington.
Still ahead, does Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen see things in the economy that others don't? What she told lawmakers when testifying on Capitol Hill today. The federal government reported a budget surplus of more than $55 billion in January. The Treasury Department says that's an improvement from a year ago, and it was helped out by a timing quirk. $42 billion in benefit checks were sent out in December because the regular payment period fell on a weekend.
Fed Chair Janet Yellen told Congress today that growth prospects in the U.S. economy have fallen in recent weeks. She walked a careful line in the first of 2 days of semi-annual testimony on Capitol Hill. She highlighted the strength of the labor market, but said financial and market conditions, including overseas, could restrain U.S. growth. Hampton Pearson reports.
Thank you.
Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen told lawmakers continued global economic woes and market volatility might force the Federal Reserve to slow the pace of future rate hikes, but not right away.
I want to make clear that monetary policy is not on a preset course, and so our evaluation of the likely impact of those developments on the economic outlook and our ability to meet both our employment and inflation objectives, those are the factors that will govern the future stance of monetary policy.
The Fed's semi-annual report to Congress raises concerns about China's economic slowdown and weaker currency, the further decline in oil prices, and the strong dollar hurting U.S. exports. But the Fed chair told lawmakers strong hiring, rising wages, and more consumer spending could help the U.S. economy weather the storm.
Ongoing employment gains and faster wage growth should support the growth of real incomes and therefore consumer spending. And global economic growth should pick up over time, supported by highly accommodative monetary policies abroad.
But Yellen did admit monetary policymakers have at least studied negative interest rates, which central banks in Japan and Europe have recently used as a policy tool.
So at this point, it's unclear whether or not the Fed does have legal authority to implement negative rates.
I am not aware of anything that would prevent us from doing it, but I'm saying that we have not fully investigated the legal issues. That still needs to be done.
Day one of the Fed chair's congressional testimony ended with no major surprises, but also a concession that monetary policymakers are indeed closely watching global economic developments. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson in Washington.
The National Retail Federation expects sales to grow a little bit more than 3% this year. That's higher than the 10-year average, and it excludes automobiles, gas stations, and restaurants. The industry group cites a strengthening job market and steady consumer confidence and says more spending will shift away from the mall. Consumer spending accounts for about 70% of all economic activity.
The Supreme Court blocked the White House's Clean Power Plan. The justices put on hold rules that would curb carbon dioxide emissions from coal-fired power plants. The court decision means the regulations will not go into effect until an appeals court makes its ruling. The White House says it disagrees with the decision.
Also in Washington, the Internal Revenue Service says identity thieves hacked into their system. Their goal was to steal your tax refund. Eamon Javers has more on the last thing any taxpayer wants to hear during tax season. Good to see you, Eamon.
Yeah, hi, Sue. This was one of those ones where the IRS said they were able to nip it in the bud. They were able to stop this attack as it was happening, but it really reminds you of just what a huge target the IRS is for hackers around the world. So much financial information, so much personal information on the servers at the IRS. Hackers really want to get in there, and the IRS knows they're under attack every single day. Here's what happened as far as we know in this latest incident, which they revealed last night. They said thieves used previously stolen data to generate what are called e-file pins, those personal identifying numbers, to try to get in there and create and file returns. Now, what they said was this involved 464,000 Social Security numbers, and they said that the attack was halted, and so therefore no data was lost. Now, this was similar to, but a little bit less serious, an attack that happened last summer involving the Get Transcript feature of the IRS, in which people were trying to hack in and get returns and then use the data on those returns to get bogus refunds. The IRS commissioner was on Capitol Hill today, and he explained the difference. Take a listen.
I would note that both the Get Transcript difficulty and the more recent attack in the last couple of weeks, both were sophisticated forms of identity theft. The criminals already had all of the personal information of the taxpayer that they needed. None of those attacks breached our system itself. They were not cyber breaches in the sense that our database was accessed.
So, Sue, the key here is the IRS says they were able to stop this one before any major damage was done.
So you've explained what happened here, but what now happens to those, I think you said 400,000+ people whose information is out there now?
Yeah, that's right. The IRS said those were people where the hackers had stolen their information somewhere else and then were using it at the IRS to try to generate these bogus returns. What the IRS said they're going to do now is write letters to all of those people telling them, hey, you better pay attention. Your information has been stolen. It is out there on the black market. You might want to take some cybersecurity steps to protect yourself here.
As Butch said to Sundance, or Sundance to Butch, who are these guys?
That's one of the really good questions here. A lot of people think that a lot of this is coming from Russia and Eastern Europe, but attribution in cybersecurity is so difficult because they can use computers, drone those computers, and they could be from anywhere in the world. Very hard to tell sometimes.
All right, Eamon, thank you so much. Eamon Javers in Washington.
The health insurer Humana sees its latest quarterly profit drop by nearly a third, and that is where we begin tonight's market focus. The company attributed the steep loss to the cost of its medical insurance plans under the Affordable Care Act. A bright spot, the insurer said its 2016 earnings will be above forecasts. Last July, Humana agreed to be acquired by the rival Aetna for $37 billion. Shares of Humana up 1% to $161.07. Owens Corning saw its shares rise today after the company increased its quarterly dividend by 6% and posted better than expected quarterly profits. The glass and roofing products maker also issued an upbeat outlook for 2016, saying it sees continued growth in its three main business segments. Shares rose over 2.5% to $43 even. Fitbit, which makes those health and fitness products you wear in your wrist, saw its shares bulk up after two prominent stakes in the company were revealed. An SEC filing showed that Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff had taken a 5% stake in the company, while another filing disclosed that Vanguard Group now owns a big 9% share. Fitbit rose nearly 3% to $14.68.
Staples says it's received approval from European regulators to buy rival Office Depot, as long as those companies dismantle all of Office Depot's European operations in an effort to ease competition concerns. The merger is valued at more than $6 billion. The deal still needs approval from the U.S. and from Canada. U.S. regulators have challenged that deal over concerns about competition. Staples was up a penny to $8.41. Office Depot popped more than 2% to $5.03. Amazon is buying back up to $5 billion worth of its shares. The new program would replace the $2 billion buyback the company issued in 2010. Shares of the e-commerce giant rose initially in extended trading after closing up more than 1% today to $490.48. And despite issuing a worse-than-expected loss for its latest quarter, the automaker Tesla Motors saw its shares jump in after-hours trading. Strong deliveries and guidance for the year, the reason for the stock move. Tesla said it expects to deliver between 80 and 90,000 new Model S and Model X vehicles in 2016. The announcement came with news that the company posted a much worse-than-expected loss in its latest quarter. Shares were down more than 3% today to $143.67, but had a strong showing after the bell on that guidance.
A sharp drop in interest rates prompted more homeowners to refinance their mortgages last week. The Mortgage Bankers Association reports that total application volume increased more than 9%. Behind most of those gains, refinancings, not new purchases, though purchase apps are still 25% higher than they were a year ago.
And a new trend is taking hold in housing. Generations of families are living under one roof. Think Downton Abbey. Americans had moved away from that model in the last century, of course, but now they're suddenly moving back, which has opened up new doors, new designs, and new opportunities for the home builders. Diana Olick has this all in the family story.
Jennifer Michaels never intended to live with her mother, Lucy Abbott.
So who's winning?
But when Michaels sold her house faster than she expected, she and her kids needed somewhere to stay. So they went to Grandma's. Much to all their surprise, they didn't hate it.
We decided it just was like the perfect fit, and we never left.
I enjoyed the life that the kids bring to you when they're around you all the time. But we did have our challenges.
The challenge was not a bigger space, but separate spaces.
I'm time traveler.
Lucy likes the video games.
I'm a gamer and I'm up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and the kids need their sleep. Oh dear.
So mother and daughter decided to buy a next-gen home by builder Lennar, a leader in this trend. The home has 2 entrances, separate kitchens, and living areas.
I literally have gone 3 days without seeing her.
14% of all U.S. households, that's 16.5 million, already live multi-generationally.
One of the reasons is we've seen so much immigration in the last 25 years, and other cultures around the world tend to live multi-generationally. That's caused the numbers to increase substantially.
The recession also played a part. Young adults were hit hardest in the job market, and some were unable to move out. They're also delaying marriage, which keeps them home longer. On the other end of the spectrum, baby boomers are retiring and downsizing. Burns surveyed 20,000 potential home buyers and found nearly half would like to accommodate their elderly parents in their next home, and almost as many want to live with their adult children.
Not at all about the finances. In fact, the house that we were all living in, we're renting it out, so we didn't even sell it to buy this house. It's more of a connection between the generations.
Grandparents like me are more active, we do more things, we're healthier, we live longer, so the relationships with grown-up children can mature.
And so, with the right floor plan,
the little light bulb went on.
Families that don't play together can still stay together. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Diana Olick in Washington.
Grandma the gamer, gotta love that. All right, coming up deep in the heart of Texas is the priciest ranch ever sold to a sports mogul.
The owner of the NFL's Los Angeles Rams is now also the owner of a massive Texas ranch. And it's not his first land buying rodeo. Jane Wells has more on the billionaire behind what's quite possibly the most expensive ranch ever sold in the U.S.
It's good to be rich, but with the stock market seesawing and the outlook murky, where does a multi-billionaire put his money? Real estate.
It's great to be here today.
That's exactly what developer magnate Stan Kroenke has done. Just a couple weeks ago, he announced approval to move his football team, the Rams, back to Los Angeles, where he is financing a $2 billion state-of-the-art stadium on land he purchased in Inglewood. Now Kroenke has bought an even bigger piece of property. In fact, the largest single ranch in the United States. The Wagoner Ranch in Texas covers 6 counties, 800 square miles, 535,000 acres. It's bigger than Los Angeles and New York City combined. The asking price was $750 million. Actual purchase price unknown. Now, the ranch has cattle, oil, horses, farmland, and it's been owned by one family since 1849. Now, the Wagoner heirs say they picked Kroenke because he promised to preserve what's considered an American treasure. In other words, no football stadium or team here. Kroenke is married to one of Sam Walton's daughters, and together Forbes estimates they're worth over $12 billion. They bought another large ranch in Montana a few years ago, and now with the Wagoner Ranch under his belt, Stan Kroenke owns 1.4 million acres of American ranch land, making him one of the top 5 private landowners in the country, behind people like John Malone and Ted Turner. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Jane Wells.
That's breathtaking. Six
we're
counties.
Both stunned. 6 counties. Wow. We'll keep track of that story for you. That does it for us tonight on Nightly Business Report. I'm Sue Herrera. Thanks for watching.
And thanks from me as well. I'm Tyler Mathisen. Have a great evening, everybody, and we will see you right back here tomorrow night.